Never underestimate the mysteries that may lurk within an abandoned property, especially a house. There have been numerous accounts of individuals being deceived by unseen forces into renting such places, only to endure torment and misery, sleepless nights and an overwhelming sense of dread while living there. The following story is based on a true event experienced by a student. If you were in their situation, how would you respond?
I was just a humble individual from a remote village in Borneo with little exposure to the wider world. I had never traveled far nor set foot in a big city. However, after securing a job with a major corporation, I was fortunate enough to be selected for a 3-year training program in mechanical engineering. This opportunity came in the early 1990s. The training took place at a renowned training school in Subang, Selangor, Malaysia. Accompanying me was a colleague named Jack. I knew very little about him initially. We met on the plane, where we happened to be seated next to each other. Through our conversation, we discovered that we worked for the same company and were attending the same training. Although I didn't learn much about Jack's background, the entire experience was entirely new to me. In Kuala Lumpur, I was overwhelmed by the unfamiliar surroundings, the towering buildings, the diverse language, the bustling people, and the vibrant city itself. Even the time difference, which was approximately 30 minutes behind, caught me off guard. I had to adjust not only my wristwatch, but also my mindset and adaptability to this foreign environment, as it would be my home for the next 3 years. For the first 2 weeks, we stayed in a hotel while searching for a rental. After many unsuccessful calls, we decided to explore the nearby residential areas on foot. Eventually, we found a house with a sign offering house for sale or rooms for rent. It was conveniently located just a 30-minute drive from our academy. The landlord, a middle-aged man with an unsettlingly quiet demeanor, welcomed us and showed us the rooms upstairs. There were 3 rooms in total. Each was immaculately clean, furnished with a bed, a wardrobe, and a desk with a lamp. The rent was surprisingly low, RM 150 per month, much cheaper than what we'd seen in newspapers. A deal too good to be true. Without hesitation, we agreed and moved in that very evening. I took the room at the front, which had a small balcony, while Jack took the room at the back, also with a balcony. The middle room remained empty. The landlord informed us of one peculiar rule. We were not allowed to use the kitchen and had to eat at the food stalls nearby. He was mostly out during the day and only returned in the evenings. Something about his demeanor unsettled me, but I brushed it off. The first week passed uneventfully, with nothing out of the ordinary. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But then, in the second week, it began. One night, the atmosphere in the house shifted. The air grew heavier, colder. My Bible, which I kept under my pillow, became my only solace. Jack, however, was becoming increasingly uneasy. One night, he confided in me, his voice low and tense. He said he'd heard noises coming from the middle room, whispers, the soft sound of shuffling feet. He even swore he had seen the light in the room turn on by itself. Maybe someone moved in, I suggested, trying to sound rational. But there was something in Jack's expression, a deep, gnawing fear that unsettled me. As the nights went on, things took a turn for the worse. Jack refused to sleep alone, insisting on staying in my room. I didn't mind. It didn't bother me much, and I was fine with the arrangement. But one night, he woke me abruptly, shaking me awake, his breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. "Look," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The middle room." I hesitated, then slowly pushed my door open. The hallway was dark, except for the eerie glow beneath the middle room's door. The light was on. We crept closer, every step feeling heavier, the silence pressing against our ears. Just as we reached the door, the light went out. We dashed back to my room, closing the door gently, hoping no one would notice. Neither of us slept a wink that night. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of soft knocking. It was slow, deliberate, coming from the walls. My heart pounded as I sat up, straining to listen. Then, the knocking moved, to my closet door. Jack was still beside me, fast asleep. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. I reached for my Bible, clutching it tightly, and started to pray. As suddenly as it began, the knocking stopped. The next night, something even stranger happened. While Jack and I were studying, the air in the room turned ice cold, followed by a foul stench filled the room like rotting meat. Then we heard it, a low, raspy breathing sound right outside my door. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle, but before I could open it, something scratched the wood, long, deliberate strokes as if fingernails were dragging across it. Jack jumped up and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. The tension escalated. The following night, Jack woke up screaming. His arms flailed, his eyes wide with terror. It took several minutes to calm him down. "It was in my room," he gasped. "A shadow, standing over me. It was watching me." I barely slept after that. The heavy atmosphere in the house grew unbearable. We noticed strange things, objects moving on their own, shadows shifting in the corners of our vision. One evening, I left my Bible on my desk before heading out for dinner. When I returned, it was in the drawer. The pages flipped open to a verse about the dead finding no rest. The following morning, we confronted the landlord. He stared at us with a vacant expression and calmly said, "The middle room is still empty. No one has rented it." Jack was determined to leave immediately, but I hesitated. The rent was remarkably affordable, and so far we hadn't been harmed. That evening, to our relief, 2 new tenants arrived, 2 young Chinese women who had rented the middle room. We hoped their presence would put an end to the disturbances. Unfortunately, 3 nights later, they came to us, their faces pale as ghosts and their hands trembling. "There's something in that room," one of them murmured, her voice shaking. "It watches us. We hear it breathing. We feel it, hovering." Desperate for answers, they consulted a Chinese medium. What they discovered chilled us to the bone. "A man hanged himself in that room," the medium told them, "from the ceiling fan. But he was not the only one. There were others, many others. The house does not let them go." Jack and I didn't even bother reclaiming the remainder of our rent. We hastily packed our belongings and fled, the 2 women following close behind. We eventually found another house. Although it was slightly more expensive, it was a small price to pay for peace of mind and a full night's sleep. We left the old place behind without a second glance. A month later, curiosity got the better of us. While having dinner at a nearby eatery, we decided to take a detour and pass by our old rental house. The sight that greeted us froze us in our tracks. The house was in complete ruin, its windows shattered, the walls blackened and crumbling, with thick vines snaking their way through the cracks. It stood there, forlorn and decrepit, as though it had been abandoned for decades. "Impossible," I murmured, my voice barely audible. We left just a month ago. Unable to resist the pull of mystery, we approached a food stall owner and asked him about the house. His expression shifted to one of disbelief, tinged with unease. "That house?" he said, lowering his voice. "No one's lived there for years. The owner tried to sell it, but no one dares to buy it. Too many suicides. Too much darkness in that place." A chill raced down my spine, and my blood turned to ice. Jack, equally shaken, grabbed my arm. His voice was almost a whisper. "Then, who was our landlord?"
Abandoned houses often harbor many secrets, some of which remain unknown, especially to newcomers unfamiliar with the area. People who move in without prior knowledge can easily fall victim to unsettling situations. We strongly recommend speaking to neighbors before renting or purchasing an abandoned property to avoid experiencing incidents similar to what we once encountered.